Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. In this video, I have a dream and visitation and vision all in the same quote or the same discourse, and I'll show you how that plays out. This is something I've actually covered before, but it was before I put together this spreadsheet. We're looking at my spreadsheet called Timeline, Visions, and Visitations, where I'm collecting every single dream, vision, visitation, near-death experience where somebody comes in contact with those on the other side of the veil, and putting them in timeline order. And I have a tally at the bottom here by decade of the number of these experiences that I have on the spreadsheet. But this one is from, or it was told in the 1850s, but it references dreams and visions and visitations far before 1820. And I don't think I'm going to extend my spreadsheet down beyond 1820 because these would be pretty far down. So I'm going to leave it in the 1850s, and you'll see why. And I'll just say in column E that it has to do with the voyages of Columbus and the Revolutionary War. And because it has, you know, a dream, vision, and visitation all in the same thing, I'm not going to color code this one, so it's just white. Okay, so I found out about this from Joni. She has the Joyous Genealogist channel. Make sure to subscribe to her. She's actually going to Kirtland in Palmyra. She's on a trip right now. So make sure to subscribe to her and watch for those videos that she does about Kirtland and Palmyra. She's going to go to the Sacred Grove. But she was watching Joseph Smith Foundation, and they had covered this, and so she wanted to pass this along to me, and I'm glad that she did. So thank you, Joni. Okay, so it's interesting because I did a video about this 5 months ago, and it blows my mind that it's only been 5 months. I feel like I did this video like a year or two ago. Seriously, it feels like it was that long. I'm telling you, time, it's like messed up for me right now. It's passing so slowly. And I think that's because there's just so many things going on. But I did this video called America's Guardian Angel, his 17 appearances, and the temple locations he designated. I'll put a link for it in the description box below, because I talk about more than just what we're going to talk about here. So this first came to me from DC84-88 in a comment. That's what led me to do this video 5 months ago. But here we are revisiting this because now I'm tracking visions and visitations. Okay, so this is in the Journal of Discourses, and this is President Orson Hyde. President because at this time he's president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is a celebration of the 4th of July in the Tabernacle in Salt Lake. Okay, so he says, "We are met, fellow citizens, to celebrate one of the most important events that ever embellished the pages of political history, an event of which every American heart is proud to boast in whatever land or country he perchance may roam. I mean the bold, manly, and daring act of our fathers in the declaration of the independence and sovereignty of these United States, an act worthy to be engraven in letters of living light upon the tablets of our memory, and to be transmitted to our children with the sacred charge that they teach to their children and to their children's children, till the stripes and stars float over every land and are mirrored on the crest of every passing billow." And sadly, look where we're at today, especially the last few videos that I've done. And you can see here just how important the United States is to the Lord. And we all know why it was established, and how if it hadn't been established first, the church would not have been restored. And so it makes sense that Satan would attack the United States and the founding of this country and our history. Don't let that happen. Don't listen to those who disparage the founding fathers and those that came to this country, the Pilgrims, so on and so forth. Okay. They had not only the moral courage to sign the Declaration of our nation's independence, but hearts of iron and nerves of steel to defend it by a force of arms against the fearful odds arrayed against them, the well-disciplined armies and mercenary allies of the foolish and tyrannical George III, King of Great Britain. The progressive spirit of the times, on the one hand, sorry, I need to read this to kind of, just so you have like the full context. And I'm not going to read the entire discourse, so don't worry. The progressive spirit of the times, on the one hand, and the chains of cruelty and oppression on the other, inspired the apostles of American freedom to raise the standard of liberty and unfurl its banner to the world as a warning to oppressors and as the star of hope to the oppressed. The very name of America causes a thrill of patriotic devotion to her best interest to quiver in the heart of every citizen of Utah with a zeal and a pride for the welfare of our country that does honor to the memory of those departed heroes whose ashes are mingled in our soil and made rich and dear to us by our own blood. Remember Lexington and Bunker Hill, and lastly Yorktown, with all the intermediate scenes as narrated in the history of the American Revolution. Remember the immortal Washington, chosen to lead our infant armies through the perils and hardships of unequal contest to the climax of victory and the pinnacle of fame. Again, it always happens. The attacking of these really important sacred events and important people. There's so many attacks on Washington, the founding fathers, and of course with our church. I feel like the ones that are attacked the most are Joseph Smith and then after that Brigham Young, because they were two very pivotal presidents of the church, right? It's always, I mean, others are attacked too, but those are like the top two favorites, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, because they were so important, and it's so sad. All right, continuing. In those early and perilous times, our men were few and our resources limited. Poverty was among the most potent enemies we had to encounter. He's talking about the United States, of course, not just so you don't confuse it like with the saints. Although there is a parallel, you'll notice. Yet our arms were successful, and it may not be amiss to ask here, by whose power victory so often perched on our banner. It was by the agency of that same angel of God that appeared unto Joseph Smith. Okay, so he's bringing in Moroni into the Revolutionary War. And then, as you see, Columbus as well. And revealed to him, Joseph Smith, the history of the early inhabitants of this country, whose mounds, bones, and remains of towns, cities, and fortifications speak from the dust in the ears of the living with the voice of undeniable truth. This same angel presides over the destinies of America and feels a lively interest in all our doings. Now that's an interesting idea. Moroni presiding over the United States. And I guess probably the Americas too, but especially like maybe North and South America too, but definitely the United States. Okay, here it is. Here's the first one. He was in the camp of Washington, and by an invisible hand led on our fathers to conquest and victory, and all this to open and prepare the way for the church and kingdom of God to be established on the Western Hemisphere for the redemption of Israel and the salvation of the world. So I'm going to take note of this, and like I said, I'm going to put it on the spreadsheet. It's not that, to my knowledge, that Washington saw him, but he was there. He was visited. And I don't know, Joni sent me some more screenshots. Maybe there's more to this story, but I'm going to work through her texts that she sent me. I have to do it in parts. So right now we're just focusing on this. So I'll take note of it. I'll put it on the spreadsheet. It's not quite like some of the other ones where those that were being visited knew who was visiting them or that could see them or whatever. But we'll take note of it. Okay, and then the same angel was with Columbus and gave him deep impressions by dreams and by visions respecting this new world. Trammeled by poverty and by unpopular cause, yet his persevering and unyielding heart would not allow an obstacle in his way too great for him to overcome. And the angel of God helped him, was with him on the stormy deep, calmed the troubled elements, and guided his frail vessel to the desired haven. Under the guardianship of this same angel, or Prince of America, have the United States grown, increased, and flourished like the sturdy oak by the rivers of water. Okay, now that ends the visions, dreams, and visitations of Moroni to Washington and his forces and Columbus as he sailed to the Americas. So that's what I have on the spreadsheet. I did think it was worth it, though, to continue just a little bit more to this interesting point, because I added another thing from here to my quotes A through Z spreadsheet in regards to the Civil War, because President Orson Hyde says something interesting here. Okay, to what point have the American arms been directed since the declaration of our national independence and proven unsuccessful? Not one. The peculiar respect that high heaven has for this country on account of the promises made to the fathers, and on account of its being the land where the mustard seed of truth was planted and destined to grow in the last days, accounts for all this good fortune to our beloved America. But since the prophets have been slain, the saints persecuted, despoiled of their goods, banished from their homes, and no earthly arm to interpose for their rescue, what will be the future destiny of this highly favored country? Now, he's saying this in 1854. Okay? 1854. And with what he's about to say, I'm sure it's in the context of Doctrine and Covenants, section 87. So let's review that really quick. It's very short. It's only 8 verses. Okay. Revelation and prophecy on war given through Joseph Smith, the prophet, at or near Kirtland, Ohio, December 25th, 1832. So, Merry Christmas, America. At this time, disputes in the United States over slavery and South Carolina's nullification of federal tariffs were prevalent. Joseph Smith's history states that appearances of troubles among the nations were becoming more visible to the prophet than they had previously been since the church began her journey out of the wilderness. Okay. Verily, thus saith the Lord concerning the wars that will shortly come to pass, beginning at the rebellion of South Carolina, which will eventually terminate in the death and misery of many souls. And the time will come that the war will be poured out upon all nations, beginning at this place. And by the way, in case you didn't know, like if you're not from the United States, because I do have an international audience, the American Civil War is still to this day the deadliest for like American casualties compared to all other wars. Let me double check that. Civil War, or maybe like bloodiest war. Yeah, the American Civil War is the deadliest military conflict in American history, with an estimated 1.5 million casualties and between 620,000 and 750,000 soldiers killed. Okay, I like to be sure. I don't just go with things. If I ever have like any doubt, I check. There's no harm in checking. Okay, so for behold, the southern states shall be divided against the northern states, and the southern states will call on other nations, even the nation of Great Britain, as it is called, and they shall also call upon other nations in order to defend themselves against other nations, and then war shall be poured out upon all nations. And it shall come to pass after many days, slaves shall rise up against their masters, who shall be marshaled and disciplined for war. And it shall come to pass also that the remnants who are left of the land will marshal themselves, and shall become exceedingly angry, and shall vex the Gentiles with a sore vexation. And thus with the sword and by bloodshed the inhabitants of the earth shall mourn, and with famine and plague and earthquake and the thunder of heaven and the fierce and vivid lightning also shall the inhabitants of the earth be made to feel the wrath and indignation and chastening hand of an almighty God, until the consumption decreed hath made a full end of all nations. That the cry of the saints, and now this is like the key part when thinking about the Civil War, that the cry of the saints and the blood of the saints shall cease to come up into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, which is like in Hebrew it's hosts or armies, basically, from the earth to be avenged of their enemies. Okay? So, the Missouri period of church history, the 1830s, and then about 30 years later in the 1860s, that's when you have the Civil War. And it brought a lot of destruction and a lot of suffering. So, with that being said, let's go back to Orson Hyde. But since the prophets have been slain, the saints persecuted, despoiled of their goods, banished from their homes, and no earthly arm to interpose for their rescue, what will be the future destiny of this highly favored country? Should I tell the truth as it clearly passes before my mind's eye? My friends might censor me, and I might be regarded as an enemy to my country. If I should not tell the truth, but withhold it to please men or to avoid giving offense to any, I might be regarded by the powers celestial as the enemy of God. What shall I do under these circumstances? Shall I be guilty of the crime of hesitating for a moment? No, neither time nor place to hesitate now. Were I called upon to give evidence before a court of justice in a case to which my own father was a party litigant, the foolish might regard me as opposed to my father. If conscience, justice, and truth directed me to testify against his interest, but the wise would regard me as possessing that integrity that kindred ties could not swerve nor decoy from the truth and facts in the case. My testimony in relation to the country that gave me birth, that gave birth to my father and my father's father, is given upon the same principle and prompted by similar motive. So he's not against America. He loves America, but there was an issue when it came to the saints in Kirtland and Missouri and Nauvoo. Okay. So sure and certain as the great water courses wend their way to the ocean and there find their level, so sure as the passing thundercloud hovers around yonder twin peaks of the Wasatch Mountains, and upon their gray and barren rocks pour the fury of its storm, just so sure and certain will the guardian angel of these United States, Moroni, fly to a remote distance from their borders, and the anger of the Almighty wax hot against them, in causing them to drink from the cup of bitterness and division, and the very dregs stirred up by the hands of foreign powers in a manner more cruel and fierce than the enemies of the saints in the day of their greatest distress and anguish. And all this because they laid not to heart the martyrdom of the saints and prophets, avenged not their blood by punishing the murderers, neither succored nor aided the saints after they were despoiled of their goods and homes. So this is really interesting. So you had the United States that was given divine help to become a nation, and the purpose for that was for the church to be restored and established. But there was all sorts of trouble and strife and people that died as the church was restored, and it was driven from place to place. And so the United States, received the consequences of that, of essentially going against the church, being hostile toward the church, not protecting their rights and their lives. And so I guess a correction, a punishment was in order. But then the Civil War happened, and the church is now flourishing and growing really fast. It's just really interesting. And then you have Moroni in the mix here. Okay, so would to God that we could forget this part of our experience in the land of our fathers, but we cannot forget it. It is incorporated in our being. We shall carry it to our graves, and in the resurrection it will rise with us. Had the United States been as faithful a guardian to the Latter-day Saints as the angel of God has been to them, she would never know dissolution, nor be humbled in dishonor by the decrees of any foreign powers. I ask no earthly being to endorse my testimony or to adopt it as his own sentiment. A little time will prove whether Orson Hyde alone has declared it, or whether the heavenly powers will back up this testimony in the face of all the world. When justice is satisfied and the blood of martyrs atoned for, the guardian angel of America will return to his station, resume his charge, and restore the constitution of our country to the respect and veneration of the people, for it was given by the inspiration of our God. One positive decree of Jehovah respecting this land is that no king shall ever be raised up here, and that whosoever seeketh to raise up a king upon this land shall perish. The spirit of this decree is that no king shall bear rule in this country, and the islands contiguous to this land belong to it, unto it by promise, for they are a part and parcel of the land of Joseph, and they geographically belong to it by the covenants of the fathers. They also philosophically incline to this nearer and greater land. So this is just an incredible discourse. It goes on. You can read more, but we're going to limit the scope of this video to what we just read. So I've added that part about the Civil War to my quotes A through Z spreadsheet under War, American Civil War, currently on row 445. So right now I just have 3 things. I have the scripture that we read, what we read from President Orson Hyde, and then I have a quote from, at the time, Elder George Q. Cannon, who later became president of the court. He became a member of the first presidency. And there's a interesting thing that he talked about here about the Civil War. But I'm not going to read here because it's too long. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. Again, if you'd like, I have this video where we talked about more. We talked more about Moroni, so I'll put the link for it in the description box below. But that'll be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.